Joining us now from the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, TSN Insider, our Wednesday regular, Mr. Darren Dreger, back with Sekeres and Price. How you doing, Dregs?
I'm doing okay, fellas. It's not quite as nice outside here in Ontario as it might be there. I'm reminded often that when Ray Ferraro is home and he's not traveling, as he did extensively this week, that he's playing golf. And that rankles me a bit, I'm not going to lie. Warmer today. You could golf today. It's about 12, 13 degrees Celsius, but we're behind the eight ball. We're not ready for golf.
Dregs, the lawn is so shaggy.
Same.
The lawn is so shaggy. I need to start mowing. It's just so annoying.
Would you just stop? It's 12 to 13 degrees here too, Dreg.
Yeah.
And we actually haven't had warm enough temperatures.
It's actually been really cold.
To grow grass. We need a little bit more temperature here to get better grass growing. So, speaking of Ferraro, though, should follow up on this. So last week, I know you had the appointment that kept you from the interview with Dregs, the appointed time. And so I asked him about, these no trade clauses now being held with Central Registry and the PA, and how insiders like him are now going to have more access to, who's on whose no trade list. So we published a clip of that at Sekeres and Price. The next thing I know, who is texting me, telling me this is such a bad idea, blah, blah, blah. How would you like details of your contract going public? I said, why are you texting me? Your quarrel is with your podcast mate who's going to have all the info. I understand he was spicy about it and wanted it on the agenda of the Ray and Dregs podcast. You survived it by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I didn't get that same unleashing of venom that you got. I got pushback. I got analysis of why it shouldn't work. But I didn't get any sort of real hard-nosed debate.
He saves that for Matt.
Yeah, I was going to say it might have been the source, or it might have been 24 hours to marinate on it before it came up.
Well,
on your
and
pod.
I can tell you guys, and Pierre LeBrun touched on it in Insider Trading, when we left the general managers meetings last week, it seemed like a foregone conclusion that Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly and the Players Association were simply going to get this done. It was effectively a rubber stamp, and it's not done yet. So, that could be the lawyers of the Players Association just chewing over a word or some of the language in the document, the agreement, to establish this. But, the update is that what we thought would be done in a couple of days still hasn't been done yet in reaching the agreement as to who is actually going to house the no trade documents. And eventually it should be Central Registry and the Players Association.
I'm hearing another round of Ray Ferraro anger on this when that is rubber stamped and announced somewhere, down the road here. Help us out. What is happening with our coach here, Bruce Boudreau? It seems, speaking of foregone conclusions and rubber stamps, I think a lot of us felt like he's done so well here, the public loves him, that he would be back as head coach of the Canucks next season. But that now seems as in doubt as it is for sure. What are you hearing?
Well, I guess it's fair to say it's in doubt because there hasn't been any meaningful discussion between the two. And I think that Bruce has basically acknowledged that, hasn't he, locally when asked about it. I don't find it unreasonable and I don't find it abnormal because, a lot of teams are wanting to wait until the conclusion of the NHL regular season. They want the focus to be solely on grinding into the playoff picture. And for now, it looks like it's pretty established and won't be the case for Vancouver. But, up until very recently, that has been the focus. It was the focus leading up to the trade deadline. Then you've got the other side of the equation. I mean, Bruce was brought in on a short term. There were no promises made by the Aquilinis at that point. What's undeniable is the job that he's done. And it has been terrific. He got the immediate bump when he took over from Travis Green. And for the most part, I think that the hockey operations, the new crew there, has been pleased with the results. Is there a difference between being pleased with the short-term results and seeing a fit with Bruce Boudreau and the coaching staff in a longer term? I can't answer that. And I think that that's probably what Jim Rutherford and Patrick Galvin and hockey operations are chewing on right now. And what further complicates it is the number of teams that either have the interim label on their head coach or have expiring contracts. There could be some interesting names that do jump into the pool. And maybe Vancouver is a little bit undecided at this point and doesn't want to really take hold of it until the season is over.
Who do you think has got the power here? Like at this point, does it sound like Boudreau might be as disenchanted with the team as is the other way around? Can you get a sense of where the hesitation is?
I don't think that there's any hesitation, Blake. I think that this is just process in due course. And it's not great for Bruce Boudreau, right? But there were no guarantees coming into this. But again, I don't want anybody who's listening to go, all right, well, that doesn't sound good. I guess they're just buying time until somebody better surfaces. I don't know that to be the case. But it feels like, and it's pretty obvious, if the Vancouver Canucks as a group, including ownership, were 100% sold that they needed to commit to Boudreau, maybe they would have engaged by now. But every team that I talk to about a similar situation, they tell me the same thing. They just want to wait until the end of the year. And I don't believe there's anything sinister in that. I'm a bit surprised, and this is just Bruce Boudreau being Bruce Boudreau. He doesn't know how to not answer a question. And I'm surprised at how open he's been through the process and the fact that there hasn't been anything going on. He openly, of course, wants to stay in Vancouver. He wants to continue to be a coach, let alone an NHL head coach. Might have been a little bit more prudent, only my opinion, observation, if after the second time it was asked, he just said, you know what, guys, there's nothing to talk about here. And until there is something to talk about, I'm just not going to address it.
Yeah, he's been very open for sure. I think there's a little bit of a raw wound here as well, Dregs, just because, of course, Travis Green a year ago was in not the same situation, because, of course, there's this option year that is a little bit more murky for Boudreau. But, Travis Green, it was very slow, the negotiations there. And it turned out he got his extension, of course.
Right.
So it looked very suspicious. Different management, but same owner.
Yeah.
And we were all raised eyebrow then, but he ultimately did get the extension.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no reason to doubt at this point that that's not exactly what's going to happen with Boudreau. I don't recall another time in the last decade plus where coaches maybe have had less leverage, right? Now there'll be some that automatically go, okay, wait a second here, but not to the degree that Mike Babcock once had or Joel Quenneville once had, even Alain Vigneault to that degree. The only guy that comes to mind now, and I'm not being disrespectful of any of them, because there are guys on expiring contracts. Rick Bowness comes to mind in Dallas. Dallas Aikens comes to mind with the Anaheim Ducks. These are coaches with experience. The only guy that comes to mind is Paul Maurice. And Paul Maurice stepped away because he felt it was the right time to step away. There's no guarantee that he's going to wade back into the coaching pool. But if he did, I think that there's a coach that has enough swagger that, he'd expedite a multi-year opportunity very, very quickly. I don't see that happening soon, but it could happen in the offseason.
So, just to be clear, you don't get the sense that this is Boudreau going, I've done a good enough job here over 4 or 5 months that maybe I'm in line to take over better NHL teams and being coy or cautious in any kind of
negotiation?
Commitment to the
I don't think so. But is it plausible? It is. It is, Matt. I tried to poke around on it a week or so ago and literally got zero response, which is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. So I don't think so. I think Bruce he wants the world to know, and that includes ownership and management. He likes his job in Vancouver and he wants to keep it. I think that's the bottom line.
And so obviously the options that are held next year, it's not like it's at both of their discretions. The team has to oblige, right? Boudreau says, hey, I want to exercise the option and coach for you next year and in my final year. The team still has to sign off on that. It's not at his option.
I believe so, but I'm not 100%. That was my understanding initially, and there's been some gray area around that. But again, that's one of the loose details that, at least at this point, nobody in Vancouver management or ownership wants to answer.
Well, and because when this story first came out, Dregs, I was like, oh, okay, this sounds like Boudreau and his agent posturing for an extension, right? So that they don't have to coach into the last year of a deal and likely get a bump in pay because as Bruce himself even said, he was so desperate to coach in the NHL, he would have signed anything back in December.
Of the tenured coaches that have good teams right now, how many of them are in excel or leave sort of situations? Like, and this might go for a guy even like Woodcroft in Edmonton, like
in Edmonton,
are these and Keefe and others, because let's pretend that Boudreau's got sinister eyes towards another organization because they're closer to winning a cup, and let's face it, he doesn't have 10 years of coaching left in him here, most likely. How many of those good teams really do have the proverbial gun to the head of the coaches, do you think?
It's a tough one. Dallas, again, there was all kinds of rumblings of the Dallas Stars making a coaching change past the midway point of the season, right? So I think that, unless something magical happens here for the Dallas Stars and they go on a run, and who knows? I mean, they're capable. They've shown that in recent history of making a march in the postseason. If they do that, does that change, the direction of hockey operations and the coaching in Dallas? Maybe, but it seems very likely they're going to do something there. What's going to happen with Andrew Burnett in Florida?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy legitimately should be in line for the Jack Adams, and I don't know that Florida ownership, gave him a significant bump after having to deal with Joel Quenneville and Andrew Burnett taking over there. And by the way, what becomes of Joel Quenneville in the future? At some point he's going to have a meeting, a face-to-face with Commissioner Gary Bettman to discuss his involvement in Chicago and explain why he believes that he deserves another chance at getting back into coaching. And is that back in Florida? Another big question mark. So, we could go down the list because there are so many teams that, as we touched on, either have that interim label or have the expiring contracts. And you can almost make a case why the majority of those teams would be exploring maybe a change in direction. The one that also is intriguing to me is in Montreal, and that's Marty St. Louis. And, there's no doubt Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes and ownership at Montreal would love for Marty St. Louis to stay there. He's done a great job. He refreshed that organization. He seems to be a young players coach, and the Montreal Canadiens are going to have nothing but young players coming in. But they, again, agreed not to have that discussion until the end of the season. And maybe Marty has a change of heart at that point with a younger family and being away from his family and all of that. So lots of discussions, very similar to the ones we've already discussed, are going to happen across the NHL.
Gosh, Dregs, and we've talked about it here over the last week, a couple of weeks here. It almost seems like when the coaching salaries exploded as they did with Babcock, and you'll remember the offer from Buffalo and he winds up going to the Leafs, and then Quenneville got a huge payday. It almost seems like the owner's response to all that pushback has been, okay, we're going to let you coach into the final year of your contracts a little more readily.
Oh, yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Which never used to be the case, right? It seems to be a battlefield right now between these coaches and their agents and the teams.
And look, this is what these men do for a living. And head coaches, no matter what they get paid, there's low to high, but they're all well compensated. It's the National Hockey League. Not every assistant coach or staff member is nearly as well compensated. And, tough times in Ottawa, obviously with the passing of Eugene Melnyk. But I look at that scenario, DJ Smith has one more year left on his contract. I believe that everybody else is up. And I mean everybody, like Capuano, Davis Payne, the trainers, like everybody in Ottawa. So I don't know if it's ever been a more difficult time to kind of iron out or map out your job security in the National Hockey League than it is now. If you're a member of not only the head coaching fraternity, but the support staff, it's difficult.
Moving along, I saw you quote tweeting and getting in on the discussion that Wayne Gretzky and Pierre LeBrun's column on The Athletic have triggered here, and that is the Hart Trophy, which by criteria goes to the player adjudged most valuable to his team. Should that be changed to just best or most outstanding player, which is reflected in the Ted Lindsay Award as voted on by the players? But it's an interesting group of candidates this year. And as people sit there and evaluate Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and maybe to a lesser degree, Austin Matthews, who has Mitch Marner on his line, and sit there and go, well, a judge most valuable to his team, that sort of punishes guys who have good teammates and rewards guys who don't have good teammates. Where are you at on the Hart Trophy definition, and could you see a change there?
I think it's unlikely, and I'm going to ride the coattails of the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I thought the piece in The Athletic, kind of echoed what my thoughts are on it. That's why you have two awards, and the Ted Lindsay's most outstanding is a very difficult one. Because you're literally trying to identify the most outstanding player in the National Hockey League, period. Now, the Hart, again, based on definition, as you've described, Matt, is most valuable to your team. Okay, well, then let's just decide who is that. Is it Marner or is it Matthews? Well, for me, I'm always going to side with the goal scorer. Sorry, Mitch. Marner's been lights out good. He's been electrifying. And a big part of the reason why Matthews has scored the number of goals that he scored, but the goals always matter more. Now, do I think that Draisaitl is more important right now than Connor McDavid? I could make that case, again, based on goal scoring. It's a tough situation. It is, but at the end of the day, you can only have one. And it's a very difficult decision to make. And I have ample time for the debate on it. The reason I quote tweeted LeBrun's piece purely was because it was low-hanging fruit, right? And anytime you can inject Toronto versus the West, then I'm going to do that every single time. So I'm scrolling a little bit.
Yeah, and I can understand why the good people in Edmonton might think they have two MVPs on their team. They're that good.
Well, they do.
Yeah, no, they do. And how about Gretzky's remark that he found the Lindsay more difficult to win continuously because he thinks players look for different candidates even more so than us guys in the media? Blake thought that was...
We're the lazy ones usually. So voter fatigue, I get as the accusation to media, but to me, don't the players just respect talent even if they've got a personal grudge on the ice with somebody? I get the feeling they just know who the best player is still.
I would think so, but I guess it depends on how significant the grudge is. And, is there a repetitive reason for not looking at the same guy? Fair or unfair, right? I mean, if you believe that Connor McDavid was the most outstanding player, well, you could build that case for the last 5 years, more or less. So maybe you do look around and you say, geez, well, Leon Draisaitl had a 50-plus goal campaign. What Matthews has done, what Marner has done, what Roman Josi has done in Nashville, and the list goes on and on and on. Look, it's difficult. It's tough. But I like the fact that the Lindsay is there because it forces the players to make those difficult decisions, no different than those who have votes for the major awards. And voting on the Hart is never an easy thing to do.
No. Lastly and quickly, Travis Green, is he a candidate to coach our World Championship team?
Well, I think he has to be. As I suggested in Insider Trading, Shane Doan is a strong candidate to be the general manager for Team Canada. They're kind of working through all of that right now. I know that Doan and Travis have a good relationship. I don't know why he wouldn't be, right? I always like when Hockey Canada brings in new blood, or USA Hockey, or any of these federations, because frankly, it's just too easy to go back to the old guard. And with all due respect to Claude Julien, you know what? Things didn't go the way that Canada was hoping, right? Internationally, the Olympics. So, if Travis is interested, and not everybody is, but if he's interested and it fits with his family, then he should be a leading candidate.
Great stuff, Dregs. We'll let you get back at her. Thank you for this. Catch up next Wednesday. Beware round 2 with Ferraro on no trade lists going public. All right.
All right, guys. Have a great week.
Darren Dreger, everybody, our Wednesday NHL insider from the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast and TSN. Yeah. On this Boudreau business, someone there has spoke up. Someone in the Canucks front office has raised their hand and said, yeah, but. And Darren is right. That is typically good process. Let's all hash this out. Let's discuss. Let's keep an eye to the long term and not just the short term. Let's consider past results, but not be slaves to them. And that's got to be a voice of some influence. Because otherwise, Darren is absolutely right. You would think with what he has done with this team over the last 4 or 5 months, that you would have this sorted and not allow it to be a public issue where you have to stonewall. And did you hear that? Extraordinary. I've reached out on this and got nothing back, and that's extraordinary. Typically a guy like Darren Dreger can get something on the file. Right now, everyone being that quiet about it tells you the degree of sensitivity that's at play.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, unlike Travis Green's a year ago, that was a team in turmoil. It was a struggling team. You understood why they would want to sit and think about things a little bit more. On this file right now, with what he's done with this team, you're either convinced that he's the guy and you sign it, or the silence should speak volumes. Like I don't think it's reading between lines. If you're not getting to the bottom of things right now with this coach, then to me, the extrapolation is
you don't want him.
Is pretty understood. It's pretty implied, because what's really going to happen in the next dozen games is going to change your opinion on the coach.
Well, and the other thing that I'm wondering is, it is great to have a big front office and a lot of voices, and particularly a lot of diverse voices, adding and nourishing the debate and decision making. But you do wonder, is there are so many voices that it's an unwieldy decision making process, that it's going to take longer to reach conclusions, that matters like this are going to drag a little longer and get the due public scrutiny that matters around the Vancouver Canucks are going to get when they remain unresolved.
Well, if he gets re-signed,
like those who used to defend Benning, Blake, the Benning bros, if you will, used to say to us, okay, guys, but it's not the worst thing that Benning is a small tent, single. It creates more streamlined decision-making when you're taking the opinions of fewer. When you were as resolute as that front office was. Now, they're wrong a whole lot, but they did come to opinions and conclusions quicker.
They came to those wrong decisions so efficiently.
No, but that is the alternative, right? That is,
yeah. I mean,
you become a people dawdle, and
first of all, we don't know that this is an example, because
we don't know that.
Because if they don't sign him, then for all we know, this was a very efficiently handled decision, and they made it a long time ago. Or not
we
long
we
time
don't
ago,
know
but
that. We're just wondering. I mean, this is a new group. They don't have much of a track record. They don't have much of a history. So what are the possibilities here? That's what I'm trying to hash out.
I'll wait till I see what the decision is, because again, if they don't bring him back, then it's not going to be an example of that at all. I don't think. I think it's going to be an example of probably a pretty quick decision on Bruce Boudreau, the fact that they appear to have already made it. Now, if they do re-sign him, then we can, go back to that, I suppose. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that, why don't we talk about the fine folks, or the fine folk, Jason Hommick. Yeah.
Talking about big decisions. Jason is involved in big decisions with a lot of his clients, right?
And
mortgages.
It's more than just him. There's people behind the scenes there that help make Jason.Mortgage the well-oiled machine that it is. But hey, these are big decisions, folks. This is probably one of your biggest financial investments. For me, it is. The mortgage. Get it right. Save thousands at a critical time when it comes to rates as well. Give them a moment of your time to look at your current situation, and it could be saving you thousands in no time.